Charmed Part 2. Billy was then frog-marched from the living room to the boys' nursery wearing nothing but her pale blue bra, mittens, and a diaper. Each step she took was accompanied by an immature crinkle as the scaled-up diaper bunched between her legs and causing the cover to crinkle. Once into the nursery, Billy was told to stand in front of the changing table. The tormentor with the green hat had given Billy's arm a hard enough squeeze that the young witch had decided to comply rather than be seriously injured. Rummaging through the neatly folded piles of baby clothes, the tormentors drew out a couple of different suggestions for Billy, but they kept their backs to their captive so Billy couldn't see what they had taken hold of. After a very brief conversation in muffled voices, Billy found the three demons turning around together, each holding a different garment of clothing. Pouncing on Billy, who found herself knocked onto her back with a jarring thud, the tormentors pulled on the baby clothing, which seemed to expand as it was pulled over Billy's body so it fitted perfectly. Well, perfectly for the tormentors, Billy thought. Being dragged forward so her neck was forced forward, Billy had to strain her neck whilst the demons fixed her hair. She doubted they would put any makeup on, and Billy could guess that the only accessories she'd have would be her pacifier and diaper bag. The tormentors allowed Billy to draw her neck back in. She stared down at the outfit she had been dressed in. Biting back tears, Billy stared at the bright red strawberry shortcake dress. The large frilly white collar seemed to be the only decal on the dress, which was plain white, and the skirt only extended down far enough to cover the top half of Billy's diaper. On her feet were a pair of black patent leather Mary Jane shoes with the T-bar buckle securely fastened over brilliant white socks that extended up to her calves. Finding her pacifier being pushed between her lips, Billy watched as the pacifier was clipped to her chest via a Minnie Mouse holder. Touching her hands to her head, Billy found a large bow that forced her hair down around her head, with the front of her hair forced down so it gave her a childish straight fringe just above her tweezed eyebrows. Pulling her hands either way, Billy found that the cord attached to her mitts was threaded underneath her dress and out through the arm loops, making her the perfect baby doll. Only she wasn't a baby, and being the epitome of cute did not please her whatsoever. She spun as she felt Luna orbing back into the room, and her dress flew up, revealing all of her diaper to the room. "Well, aren't you sweet?" Luna mocked. Turning to the tormentors. "Now we have to go out and buy some diapers for Junior, so you will have to come with me." Luna smiled. "But I don't want you to attack the general population. Instead, I want you to make sure that our junior witch in training here is as uncomfortable as possible. So don't forget her diaper bag," Luna said as she orbed everybody out of the room. Being bonded into the diaper meant Billy had little or no chance of removing it. And even as she was transported through time and space to her destination, she could feel the pressure on her bladder growing. Unbeknownst to her, Luna was increasing the volume in the young witch's organ, but even that wouldn't had improved Billy's mood. Reappearing in her local mall, Billy allowed her head to sink downwards. She didn't want to make eye contact with anybody, especially as there was a high chance that she would meet more than one person she knew. First, she would have to suffer being made to wander around dressed like a baby. Then Luna would probably force herself to reveal she was a witch, and with the tormentors there, Billy knew her embarrassment would increase threefold. Strangely, even as she crinkled through the mall, Billy wasn't receiving that much attention. Stealing glances upwards, she saw that whilst she drew some stares, most people hardly took any notice. Or at least were trying not to take any notice. As Luna silently guided Billy around the mall and into the main shopping center, the volume of people increased, as did the stares and whispering. With the pressure on her bladder increasing exponentially, Billy tried to force herself to forget about the pressure and concentrate on remaining dry and saving herself a lot of embarrassment. However, as the pressure increased to an almost unbearable level at the shoe section of the mall, Billy's pace began to slow up too much for Luna's liking. Turning to Billy and crouching down, as one would do when talking to a toddler, Luna affected a cross face. "Now what's wrong, Junior? Do you need something? Or do you just want to stare at some new shoes? Because I'm sure one of the ladies will be able to help you find some nice new ones." Luna patronized in that stupid way people speak when addressing a baby. Billy looked up at the workers in the shoe department. Far from being ladies, they were instead 16-year-old girls with smirks on their faces. Billy shook her head and tried to keep pace with Luna. Very shortly, Billy again found herself lagging behind the demon, and the tormentors who had been keeping pace began to drop back behind Billy and push her, so she stumbled forward. With her head down, Billy was forced to stumble along. With one misplaced step, Billy's toe found herself stubbing harshly on the edge of a mirror that she hadn't seen. Billy winced because as she had stumbled to prevent herself from landing face first on the floor, she had overstepped, and now the pressure on her bladder was effectively easing the hard way. In the reflection of the mirror, she watched as an increasing damp patch appeared along the bottom of her diaper. Praying that no one noticed, Billy knew that was idiot optimism, as her skirt had never been near to covering that far down, and as she walked, Billy could feel the increased weight on her diaper pulling it further down. She was, now, able to step back up and keep pace with Luna, who Billy could see was offering her a condescending smile to the young witch as they walked along. "Hey cutie." A boy from one of Billy's classes laughed. "You appear to be in need of something." Billy looked up at the boy's face, and behind her pacifier offered him a snarl. Of course, the childish garment somehow made the gesture meek and placid, but Billy felt a little better about until. "Aren't you going to thank this man for telling you, Junior?" Luna asked. "Yeah, Junior." The three tormentors sang together, giggling. Billy contorted her face as she stared at the boy. "Thank you," she gurgled behind the pacifier, biting each word out. "Well done, Junior," Luna mocked. "She's been practicing her manners." Luna smiled proudly. If only she could practice going to the potty. The boy laughed. "Yes, that would be a help." Luna guffawed. "See you on Monday." The boy smiled at Billy, giving her cheek a pinch. Billy felt the tears come forth now. That was humiliation of the highest order. It was one thing to run around with full diaper in privacy, but a wet one in public was worse, and Billy knew there were only two things that could top it. And she wanted neither. Seeing how Luna hadn't thought to restrain her in any way, Billy began to look up. Although this meant she could see the judging faces of the people in the store more clearly, she could also plan out how far she would have to run when she chose her moment. Looking down again, Billy realized she was slightly thankful that the tormentors hadn't put her in booties, because the Mary Janes should afford her a bit more support once she was running. Being thankful for small mercies was all Billy could take from her present situation, especially as she was directed down the diaper aisle. Billy had hoped it would be deserted, but there was a crowd at the bottom of the aisle of people who had clearly been informed of Billy's predicament and wanted to see for themselves. She could even hear the click of camera cells going off as she guessed that she would be an internet celebrity by the end of Close Tonight. She glared up at the store's security cameras before returning her gaze to Luna, who was standing in front of Billy with a package of diapers in her hands. The package of convertibles that Luna held in her hands began to swell slightly as the demon pumped magic into it. The outward designs remained mostly the same, however the size chart changed, so it read, "Sabrina, for all junior witches," and the baby on the front began to age considerably. Billy kept her gaze constant and tried to stare through the package. Satisfied that she had held the package up long enough so that all the camera-happy crowd could get their pictures, Luna thrust the package of diapers at Billy and with a large sigh waited until her captive took hold of the package. Turning towards the crowd in the aisle, Luna began to meander down it, looking for some other products for Billy. With Luna turning her back, the tormentors did the same. Sensing this was her chance, Billy hurled the package at Luna as hard as she could and was rewarded with the demon being knocked off of her feet. Sprinting down the aisle, Billy ignored the tormentors as they tried to grab her, lifting herself over them with a flip. Darting forward, she headed into the crowd, who parted when they saw the desperation on the girl's face. And although some tried to stop her, Billy wasn't letting a couple of hands stopping her from escaping. Rushing through the crowd, Billy watched as Luna pulled herself to her feet and motioned for the tormentors to start after her. Reaching the checkouts, Billy didn't stop to get held up by the lines. She simply jumped onto an unmanned station and cartwheeled back onto the floor, causing her skirt to fly up around her face, but it did nothing anyway, so the young witch didn't care. Her Mary Jane's shoe squeaked as they came into contact with the mall floor and as the tormentors tore after her by jumping from wall to wall and running in unnatural ways after her. Billy knew that most people would either be talking about what they saw or would hear about it. Billy had just begun to open up a lead away from the tormentors. After all, no matter what running abilities they had in a straight sprint, they were still smaller than Billy, and she was rounding a corner when heard Luna yell across the mall. "You're being very bad, Junior." Billy gritted her teeth as her mittens gave her but a good pounding, but rather than stop she used every stinging swat to try and force herself onwards. Fortunately she didn't begin crying behind the pacifier. Unfortunately, however, Billy found her dress becoming heavier. At first it pushed Billy off balance, but as she was leaning forward anyway, this wasn't a major problem. However, the weight continued to pile onto the dress, and as it wasn't long enough to even cover her diaper when she saw sprinting Billy became increasingly top-heavy. So much in fact that she began stumbling forward. Despite this, Billy kept kicking her legs and managed to keep the tormentors from breaching the lead she had over them. Finally, though, the weight of the dress became too much and forced Billy to the ground. Kicking out with her feet, Billy began to try and crawl as quickly as she could away from the tormentors. Knowing that the door to the mall was just around the corner spurred Billy on and gave her enough strength within her thin arms to hold off the weight of her dress from forcing her to a complete stop on the ground. As she rounded the corner on all fours, Billy found that all that separated her from the outside world was two sets of legs. Each wore the standard issue mall security grey slacks, and as Billy tried to bundle past them she found herself being pulled upright by the sleeves of her dress. The two security guards held her underneath her arms and left Billy kicking her legs out to try and find some traction even though she was off the ground. Billy even tried a few futile kicks at the security guards, but they held her firm. "Let me go." Billy squirmed. "Aren't you a cutie?" One of the security guards cooed at Billy. It was then that behind the obligatory Ray-Bans Billy saw that both of the guards had the silver eyes of tormentors. "Let me go." She struggled again. "But you've had a little whoopsie." The other tormentor smiled. "Maybe we should take you back to Mummy. You've got such an affinity with kids." The first tormentor smiled to his partner. Billy kicked and bucked like a mule, but the demon's arms stayed tight under her armpit, seemingly unfazed by the substantial weight of the dress. They lifted Billy between them as if she was nothing. As Billy was carried through the store, she began to slip down slightly from the guard's grip. Far from being a sign of the guards weakening, their grips remained constant. It instead caused Billy's dress to ride up higher, revealing the extent to which she had wet her diaper. The core between her legs was nearly solid with liquid and was in quite a bit of danger of leaking. She heard voices coming up behind, and shortly Billy was staring at three familiar faces. "We could have caught her." The oldest teen tormentor moaned. "But you're just a kid yourself. And you don't send a child to do an adult's job." The first security guard tormentor mocked. "We were just about to catch her at the door to stop her from hurting herself. You've been forced to carry her all the way." The green-hatted tormentor sighed. "Well, don't worry about it. If you want a piggyback, you can go next." The second security guard smiled. Billy couldn't believe what she was hearing. The tormentors were actually fighting over her. As if she was a trophy or a prize. This wasn't a good thing, but perhaps it could be used to her advantage when she made her move to escape. It wasn't like she'd be getting that chance soon, however, as Billy felt a strong hand underneath her diaper, and as she was levitated up slightly, Billy knew she would be shortly face to face with Luna. With Luna's hand underneath her diaper, it must have looked as if the demon was carrying with as little difficulty as one would have carrying an infant. Billy found the arms of her dress tightening slightly as she was pulled in against Luna's chest. The young witch's legs were then frozen and pulled up around Luna's hips, so it looked like she was cuddling into the demon. The bow of her head then began to increase in weight as well, forcing Billy's head down onto Luna's shoulder. Lifting her eyes up to Luna's face, Billy was greeted by only a mocking smile so omnipotent it made her toes curl. "I think your little ones had a little whoopsie," one of the security guards stated. Billy could no longer see the guards as her head was almost clamped to Luna's shoulder. Billy felt her diaper being squeezed underneath her. She is very wet. I don't want her to get diaper rash again, Luna announced loudly whilst hiking up Billy's skirt, exposing her entire diaper. Is it a common problem? The other guard asked. Oh, you saw how Junior likes to run, Luna explained. If she's carrying a load, then I have to wait until I can catch her to change her. I understand. The guard laughed. I know how difficult it is with little ones. He must have done something to the tormentor in the green hat because she yelped slightly. But the girls are such a big help. Luna smiled. Yeah, we dress Junior and everything. The girls chimed. Sometimes though it's better just to rely on adults. For instance, maybe you could have put a couple of these three down for a nap whilst you went shopping. It would have been so much easier to hang on to Junior. The tormentors were very openly in fighting now. Thanks for the suggestion, but no. Luna snapped once again, cracking the whip to show she still wielded it. Billy then found herself moving, darting her eyes about. She heard Luna's high-heeled clack on the mall floor. As Billy became disorientated due to her lack of anything but her peripheral vision, the young witch just shut her eyes and prayed for a quick end. This of course wasn't to be. Are you tired, Junior? Well, you did do a lot of running about. Don't worry, you can have a nap when we get you home. Luna cooed, snapping Billy's eyes back open. Billy then found her back dropping down slightly, and as she gasped around her pacifier, she felt herself being dropped onto a bench. The bench was a circular metal contraption around a plastic tree, ironically put there to give the mall more natural life, and as Billy's dress came in contact with the corrugated iron, she heard it groan slightly against the weight. Finding herself looking at Luna and the three girls, Billy's eyes darted from each. She wasn't exactly in a prime position to fight them off at the moment. Looking to their hands, Billy saw the tormentors each had something in their hands that spelled trouble. The tormentor dressed in black and white held a bag that Billy guessed could only be a diaper bag. The tormentor with the green hat held the package of diapers that Billy had flung at Luna, and the tormentor in the soccer top was holding onto a plastic mat. Glancing about, Billy knew what was coming next and she didn't like it. Trying to pull herself upwards, Billy realized that she couldn't even move her head. The weight of what she was wearing was so intense. Looking at Luna, she saw that she was holding what was worst of all, her wand. Luna then tapped her wand gently against the ground. For Billy, that sound seemed magnified, but the rest of the mall appeared to have its volume turned down. She could hear her own slightly panicked breathing, and heart was beating loud in her chest, but the usual hustle and bustle of the crowd was gone. The bench creaked with relief as Billy levitated from it slightly. Being held inches above the ground, Billy was forced to watch as the changing mat was slid underneath her. The tormentor's sandals squeaking on the floor. As Billy was settled back down onto the changing mat, she felt her legs stick slightly to the mat. Her exertions from running had made her sweat slightly, and the plastic was readily sticking to that. Every move Billy now made was now accompanied by an orchestra of crinkles as the sounds felt magnified in Billy's ears. Luna then took the package of diapers from the tormentor and tore it open. The tearing sound was almost deafening to Billy, who shook her head to try and clear her ears. Oh, poor baby is getting fidgety, the soccer tormentor mocked. She then moved over to beside Billy and placed her hand on top of Billy's stomach. Coochie coo, she mocked. Suddenly Billy felt like she was being electrocuted. Every time the tormentor touched her stomach, Billy felt jolts of electricity jolt out from the demon's fingertips. Billy had no choice but to try and squirm. She even yelped behind the pacifier, but the gurgling sound closely resembled that of a giggle, so Billy knew she wasn't going to receive much help. Respite did come though, however, from an unlikely source. Luna shooed away the tormentor and with a diaper in one hand motioned for the diaper bag to be brought to her. Billy gritted her teeth and prayed for Luna to get on with it. Opening the diaper bag, Luna opened a lined pocket. Billy wondered what that was for, and then pulled out a packet of baby wipes out of another. Using the excessive weight around Billy's head and shoulders, Luna hardly even needed her demon's strength to move Billy's legs up into the air. Although Billy was not offering much resistance in the hope that this would speed her change. Luna methodically untaped Billy's diaper and balled it up. She then took the soaked garment and placed it into the lined pocket of the diaper bag. Billy silently scolded herself for not guessing what it was for, but also wondered why on earth Luna didn't just send one of the tormentors to the bin with it. Now exposed to the mall, Billy watched helplessly as Luna opened the baby wipes and carefully drew one out. Piper stared at the fat demon. Everything he said made sense, but he was a demon. It made believing him more difficult even if what he said was logical. So we are trapped in this demon's wand, with you and everybody else whose souls she's stolen? Piper questioned. That's right. Gronders said. You've got to forgive Piper, she has a hard time believing demons. Phoebe smiled. I've got good reason to be this way. Piper shot back. But from what you've said, we don't really have emotions here. Paige asked. That's right, your powers are being drawn out from you. Gronders stated. You felt that? He justified to Piper. And what happens is the rest of you get transferred to here. For demons like myself who have no souls, we end up just floating here whilst our powers are used. Once our usefulness is expended, we simply vanish. Sometimes Luna keeps our power, other times she just abandons it. Gronders sighed. People like you, however, she can't absorb fully, hence why she's called the Jailer of Souls. She can keep you locked up and abuse your powers, but she can't steal them completely. So how do we stop her? Phoebe asked hopefully. Wait a minute. Piper said, her gaze narrowing. If there are so many hundreds of souls, where are they all? It's just us here. Gronders regarded Piper for a moment. His mouth showed shock and awe, but his eyes showed sadness. Lifting his arm up, he left a shimmering residue behind it. I don't see it. Piper stated. She felt Paige nudge her in the ribs. Look again. Her sister growled. This time Piper watched as Gronders lifted his arm. In the glowing trail following his arm, Piper could make out a swirling mass. Again Gronders moved his arm and Piper saw that the swirling mass wasn't some strange fluid like she'd originally believed she was floating in. No, instead she could now make out hundreds of faces staring at her in the tiny piece of light from Gronders's arm. Turning her gaze around her, Piper saw that there was enough space in this cavernous place to be full of millions, if not billions of souls. Watching her own luminance, Piper watched as she lifted and fell with what she had originally seen as the tides of the liquid was instead hundreds of souls trying to make her see them rushing at her at once. She looked at Paige and Phoebe, both with tears in their eyes. Piper touched our cheek and realized that Sheeta was crying. They had to find a way out of this, and soon. Billy winced as the final baby wipe was drawn over her skin. It wasn't the texture of the cloth that made her wince, but with the sounds all around her being subdued, she was forced to listen to her own harsh breathing. With the lack of ambient noise from the mall, Billy retreated inside, her mind desperately searching for every tidbit of information she knew about her captor and her imps. And unfortunately that wasn't much, so instead she found herself pondering her situation and wishing that her next diaper change, as due to the hopelessness of her situation she was sure that there would be a next change, would at least be in the privacy of a nursery or restroom. She shuddered at the thought that this should bring her some consolation. Finally Luna took the diaper in her hand and pulled it under Billy. Bringing out baby powder, she deftly powdered the young witch and then fastened the thick diaper around Billy's waist. Billy guessed she should have been at least grateful for a clean diaper as the noise from the mall began to pick up and the world seemed to shift back to normal. Finding the weight of her dress subsiding, Billy was made to sit up and stare into Luna's eyes. You look hungry. Luna smiled. It wasn't a nice gesture. Well, you shouldn't need changed, and I bet you sleep a whole lot better with a full tummy. She teased, crinkling her nose at Billy, who had to restrain a curse. Picking Billy up and dropping her back onto her feet, Luna placed a hand on Billy's back and pushed her own wards. Billy screwed her face slightly as increased the length of her paces and turned to glower at Luna, who simply responded with the word harness. Billy felt the blue nylon orb around her dress and she could feel the reins being drawn up behind her. Well, I don't want to loose you again, Luna taunted. The three tormentors quickly surrounded Billy. The demons would take it in turns to try and grab her hands and pull them into the arm restraints. At first Billy had no trouble in fending off the abominations, but they became more and more persistent. From simple, "look over there," taunts they started messing with the cord around her mittens and her pacifier. Biting back spell after spell, Billy was forced to try and fend off the tormentors whilst once again becoming a public spectacle as Luna steered her up towards the food court. As the demons finally pulled one of Billy's mittens into the arm restraints, Billy found herself being hoisted up by Luna, who pressed the young witch against her hip. Taking one look into Billy's startled face, Luna licked her lips. "What a good idea," she said, examining Billy's mitten. She removed both of her hands from Billy, who stayed floating against her hip, whilst Luna quickly harnessed Billy's free hand against her waist. "Oh, don't pout, Junior," Luna threatened, returning one hand to underneath Billy's diaper. "Or I will give you something to pout about." Billy tried to suck in her lip, but it was hard. She was fighting a cavalcade of differing emotions, not least the embarrassment of having to wander around with both her mittens fastened to her waist, making her look like she was waddling around with her hands permanently on her hips. Reaching the top of the escalator, Billy was returned to the floor and nudged towards the food court. She could feel a sense of dread and foreboding. Upstairs in this mall there was a creche, and she felt pretty sure that she would end up diapered besides real babies before very long. Stealing a quick glance at the tormentors, Billy knew they suspected the same. "Now girls, I am going to find Junior and myself a seat. Why don't you go and join the queue?" Luna ordered. She hadn't asked that as a question. Slightly disappointed to be passing the creche, the tormentors obediently joined the queue of dinner-time patrons. Although the mall was busy, the food court was packed. Moving over to the children's play area, Luna wandered up to a table where a family was sitting. It was clear they were just about to sit down, because although they were at a table, their food was still on the trays and their own baby wasn't yet in the high chair. "You're at our table," Luna said, pushing Billy towards the high chair. "You can't be serious," the father said. He took one disbelieving look at Billy, then turned to Luna. "Deadly." Luna smiled. "Sorry, but I believe it's first come first served." The man gave a look to his wife, who began to put her baby into the high chair. "And anyway, it's a free country." "But it's not free for you to live." Luna glowered. "What?" the man asked, his eyes wide with disbelief. He obviously thought that Luna was some kind of weirdo. Luna simply looked into the man's eyes and he appeared to melt in a dark haze. When it cleared, his body was gone and Luna shook out her head. Clearly she wouldn't be feeding on the food at the court. The mother opened her mouth to scream, but she too was engulfed by the same haze and she disappeared. Billy desperately wanted to help, but she found her feet frozen to the floor as Luna rounded on the baby. It was such a small, helpless being that Billy was sure that if Luna had any compassion, she would show it then. The baby, however, only gurgled as it too disappeared into a dark haze. With her hands on her hips and feet frozen to the floor, Billy wasn't sure what she expected to accomplish, but she tried her hardest to leap over and choke the life out of Luna. Unfortunately, what she was reduced to was a little bob that looked almost like she was trying to dance. "Aren't you cute?" Luna sneered, turning her wand to the high chair. The plastic seat expanded outwards and began to recess further down so Billy wouldn't sit much higher than the other diners. The straps also became a lot thicker, whilst the feeding tray became bigger and stronger so it could support a lot more pressure. Luna didn't even pretend to put Billy into the chair. She simply orbed the young witch into and snapped the feeding tray sharply around Billy's arms, locking her hands out of the way below the tray. Calling one of the tormentors across, Luna ordered the demon to watch Billy whilst she took its place in the queue. Billy locked eyes with the green-hatted tormentor. "How's it going, Junior?" it teased. "Are you feeling better now that your Whittlebot is in a nice queen ID?" she mocked. I mean, you have done a couple of big whoopses in your diapers since you went back into them. Billy stared ahead stony-faced. The tormentor was not to be denied, however. Pulling the pacifier from Billy's lips, it held the pacifier by the ring. Come on, you can tell me. You enjoy squeezing a big load into your diapers. It makes you feel all warm and mushy, doesn't it? Billy took a deep breath. Well, mushy in your diaper anyway. The tormentor chuckled. I'll bet you even enjoy. I might be alone without the power of 3. But these shackles are coming off, I'm no baby. To call forth the wildcard power, to make them pay. Strike down these villains and save the day. Billy said, finishing casting the spell. The tormentor cocked its head at Billy as if it didn't quite understand. Now I know you're not that much of a stupid little baby to think that would work, so I guess you must really like screaming like a little baby. The demon smiled. Billy stared at the imp wide-eyed. You've got about 3 seconds to put this pacifier back in your mouth before you make everybody turn around and stare at you. Billy began wailing like a banshee. I meant from the moment I started explaining this. The tormentor laughed wickedly. It dangled the pacifier tantalizingly close to Billy's mouth, who for no other reason than to save her throat bit down on the pacifier to stop herself from crying. Ah, I love my whittle baby shister. The demon ridiculed. Luna then returned with the other 2 tormentors, who had big smiles on their faces. They had each brought a large plastic juice cup with a lid on, whilst Luna carried a tray with what looked like mints on it and a coffee. Setting down the tray in front of Billy, Luna looked at the imprisoned witch with a plastic smile on her face. Did somebody miss her mummy? Luna sneered. Bib, she commanded, and tied the extra large garment around Billy's neck. Looking down at the bib, Billy saw that it was pure white with a yellow border with "Mummy's Messmaker" in cartoony writing across the front. Billy gave a slight shake of her head as the pile of steaming mints was deposited onto the feeding tray of the high chair. Billy looked at mints before her and back to the demons. They clearly didn't expect her to drop her face into the muck and start eating, did they? Looking from each of the tormentors and then finally to Luna, Billy watched as they each brought out a fork. Stabbing a forkful, the demons raised them together and lunged for Billy's mouth. Billy kept her teeth clamped around the pacifier as the first of forks smeared against her mouth and none too gently stabbed at her face. Luna stopped and waited for the tormentors to tip the forks back into the mints for another go. Luna simply held out her hand. The pacifier appeared in her grasp. Smiling, she motioned to Billy, who found the bow on her head began to squeeze her crown. Opening her mouth to wince slightly, Billy found a forkful of the hot mints in her mouth. Luna then snapped Billy's mouth shut and gave her a warning point with the same finger. Swallowing, Billy found the mints to be an extremely hot and sweet chili. Not hot in temperature but as in spice. Again she found her head being squeezed, so Billy just took a deep breath and began to feed on what was being provided. Looking down, she saw that she was beginning to make an impression on the amount of chili sitting in front of her, but her mouth was burning and tears were now streaming down her eyes. She could feel her guts churning already and was pretty sure it wouldn't be long before the chili made its way onto the wrong side of her digestive tract. The forks then stopped coming and Billy found herself staring at an oversized sippy cup with the picture of a Disney princess on it. Without hesitation, she gladly began sucking down the thin milk she had been provided, in no doubt that it was probably laced with something, but Billy decided that at that moment it would be more beneficial to trade her pride for something to stop her mouth from burning. Slurping the last milliliters of liquid from the cup, Billy found herself back to being fed. This time the chili didn't seem so bad to start, but as the coating on the roof of her mouth dissipated, she was back to feeling the heat. Watching, Billy found that a couple of girls from her class were also in the mall. One was wearing a McDonald's uniform, the other a shop assistant's. At first they took a double take at Billy, who found herself missing mouthfuls of food and having them drop onto her bib as she tried to ignore the girls and continue to bite down the chili as quickly as it was being fed to her. Every glance Billy stole towards the girls, Billy found herself staring into their eyes. She tried to look away and concentrate on what she was being fed, but it was very difficult. Looking back at the pile of meat, Billy was surprised to find that she had finished the whole tray. Looking back at the girls, she saw them stand up giggling and begin to walk towards her position. Billy stared at Luna. There was no way she could convince the demon to hurry up and go. If she did, she would probably be made to endure pudding in this high chair as well, so Billy just looked around wondering what was next. When Luna pulled a bottle out of Billy's diaper bag, the young witch winced as the girls had surreptitiously walked all the way to the closest clean-up tray station just so they could get a better view of their classmate. They continued to walk towards Billy, who was trying to keep her head down when she found the bottle being forced into her mouth, with a little persuasion from her beau. Sucking on the bottle, Billy watched as her classmates approached. "Oh my goodness." One of the girls affected surprise. It took Billy a second to remember her name. Jean, Jenna, something like that. "Is that you, Billy?" the other girl, Alice, asked. "Yes, it is her." The tormentor in the black and white snarled. "Behave," Luna warned the demon. "I see you know Junior," she said to the first girl, Jenna. "We're in class together," Jenna stated. "Or at least we were. The way she's dressed, I doubt she'll be in class for quite a few years. Except maybe kindergarten." Alice laughed. "I'm surprised you say that." Luna said she hadn't released the pressure on the bottle, so Billy had to sit there effectively gagged by the bottle. "Why's that?" Jenna asked. "Oh, Junior's been in diapers all the time she's been in class. In fact, a few times she's come out needing, you know. I would have thought you all would have smelt her." Luna lied. "Really?" Alice asked.